Number 10. Man-Bat. The Man-Bat is not always a villain of Batman's. He has been known to sometimes be an ally as well. But when Dr. Kirk Langstrom is in his Man-Bat form, he is always horrifying. So horrifying that the closest thing we got to him was in one of Batman's nightmares from Batman v Superman in the DCEU. However, this wasn't really specified to be Man-Bat specifically. Dr. Langstrom aimed to create a serum to help the deaf and blind, but accidentally made a serum that also transformed anyone who used it into a giant bat-like creature. Both he and his wife suffer from its effects at one point, becoming the Man-Bat and She-Bat respectively. It would be cool to see a horror-style Batman film featuring these two monstrous and sometimes villainous characters. Number 9. Solomon Grundy. While he's appeared in lots of animated films, Solomon Grundy has yet to make his debut in the live-action world of the DCEU. This could be because of his monstrous appearance. Solomon Grundy is a zombie-like villain who sometimes ends up as a hero depending on the circumstances. He has a Frankenstein-type vibe to him as well, which likely makes him too monster-like for the likes of the DCEU. Although there are so many horror-inspired characters and villains in DC Comics that would be cool to see if that genre made its way more into the films. Horror DC, I would watch those movies. Number 8. Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange has a place in the television series Gotham, where he is played by B.D. Wong, and is depicted as the chief of psychiatry at Arkham Asylum. But we have yet to see the insane mad scientist make an appearance in the DC Extended Universe. Because he is often closely tied these days to Arkham Asylum both in the comics and in the Batman video games, it would be kind of hard to introduce this madman who has a tendency to experiment on patients and transform them into monsters into the DCEU without first introducing the famed Asylum. Hugo is a formidable and frightening Batman foe, not just because of how insane he is, but because of how brilliant he is too.
It's a perfect plan. With this machine, I can imagine Batman to be anyone I choose, and these fools will pay a fortune for it.
He was even able to use his smarts and deductive reasoning to uncover Batman's true identity.
Number 7. KNULL BORSON. Born the older brother of Odin, KNULL BORSON aka Serpent is the god of fear in the Asgardian world. He possesses all the conventional attributes of an Asgardian god. However, as the son of Bor, many of these attributes are significantly better than those possessed by the majority of his race. He possesses enough superhuman strength to shatter Captain America's shield with his bare hands, has the ability to manipulate magic as he's able to teletransport, revive the dead, and transform himself into a giant serpent. And as the god of fear, he could consume the fear of other people to empower himself, making him stronger and even younger in the process. During the Fear Itself storyline, KNULL created and gathered his worthy in order to spread chaos across the entire world. This group being made up of Juggernaut as Kurth, Breaker of Stone, Hulk as Knull, Breaker of Worlds, Atuma as Nurkhod, Breaker of Oceans, Titania as Skirn, Breaker of Men, Grey Gargoyle as Mok, Breaker of Faith, Absorbing Man as Greythok, Breaker of Wills, and Thing as Angrier, Breaker of Souls. Thor was eventually able to kill him in the storyline after some intense battles, but not without losing his own life in the process. Obviously though, both characters do come back to life just a little bit later on. However, KNULL meets his permanent end in 2019's Thor Volume 5 number 13. Want to know what led up to that point? Well, check out this whole story for yourself, starting with 2011's Fear Itself, number 1. Number 6. Cassandra Nova. This powerful telepath is certainly not well known among general audiences and has actually never been introduced in any of the movies whatsoever. Cassandra Nova is essentially a member of a parasitic race of psychic beings and attaches herself to Charles Xavier while he's still in the womb. She absorbed the darkest parts of his mind and basically became Charles' twin sister. Though the doctors pronounced her stillborn, Cassandra in fact survived and spent the next few decades as a growing mass of cells in a sewer wall, building a new body for herself and planning her revenge on her brother. Since she copied the DNA of Charles, this means that she is able to access the full spectrum of his powers, making her one of, if not the strongest telepath, because this means she has all the powers of Charles Xavier, meaning the ones that he has had and the ones that he might receive in the future as a result of any latent mutations. Overall, she is a dangerous enemy of the X-Men, having made an army of Sentinels murder over 16 million mutants on the island of Genosha, and that by itself is a reason she is on this list today. Check her out for yourself in 2001's New X-Men number 144, and let me know your thoughts on her in the comments below. Number 5. Vox. Maximus Boltagon, aka Vox, is an inhuman and son to two of the top geneticists at Datillon. Subjected to the DNA-altering Terrigen mist when he was an infant, Maximus peculiarly showed no outward sign of any mutagenic change. Although as he matured, he hid his developing psionic powers from the community, but was less successful in disguising his antisocial tendencies. His mental powers granted by the mutagenic effects of the Terrigen mist give him the ability to numb, override, and even get rid of a person's mind. He has the ability to induce short-term amnesia in others and the ability to exchange his consciousness with another person as well. He does seem to have a limited range though, but it is made up through variability, as he's only able to affect minds in a certain radius and only create one effect at a time. His influence generally functions while Maximus concentrates, but he has been known to leave long buried influences in his subjects as well, which he can trigger by voice command, causing a subject to carry out embedded commands, forget something, or even remember something. In the recent Death of the Inhuman storyline, Maximus is at New Arctillon when the Kree begin their campaign to get the Inhumans to join them or die. The superhuman Vox and the Kree with him are on New Arctillon and begin murdering every Inhuman they come across, old or new. Armed with all the Inhumans' abilities and no humanity whatsoever, Vox easily cuts his prey down with his powers or with his literal energy scythe. Even Maximus cannot defeat Vox as he quickly loses an arm for even making the attempt to try and do so. It was later revealed that the Kree took his body and placed it in a Vox costume where he was brainwashed to serve the Kree. When Beta Ray Bill took down Vox during his confrontation with Black Bolt, it broke the brainwashing on Maximus as something on Vox's costume teleported her way while also killing Maximus in the process. Number 4. Mad Jim Jaspers. Mentioned briefly at the beginning of our list when I was talking about the Fury, Mad Jim Jaspers is not a super well-known villain, but just because they're not well-known doesn't mean that they're not scary. He has a truly terrifying power, which is the ability to shift and twist reality however he sees fit, making him without a doubt one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, having powers beyond the cosmic entities. Couple that with the fact that he's, well, mad, and you get something out of a David Lynch nightmare that you do not want to mess with. Jaspers regularly twists the world into the nightmare hellscape he believes reality to be, and this, as you can imagine, leads to some imaginative and horrifying scenarios. According to Merlin, the 616 Jaspers is just way too powerful, stating this version of Jaspers is too powerful, too dangerous. His 238 counterpart could at least be halted even if it meant destroying his entire continuum. This one, however, is not so easily containable, and if he can't be defeated, then the Omniverse shall fall into chaos and a new hostile god shall play dice with the matter. Now, if you want to know more about the character, then check him out in his first appearance in 1983's Daredevil, number 9.
Number 3. DOLLMAKER. DOLLMAKER has a horrific origin, which makes it hard to introduce him without going full horror film mode. When Barton Mathis was young, he would go camping with his father, who it turns out was a serial killer. While camping, Barton would not only witness his father kill people, but also commit acts of cannibalism. He also saw his father killed when apprehended by the police. Years later, Mathis would grow up to be a gifted but deranged surgeon who was obsessed with using his victims' body parts to craft dolls. He wears a mask made of human skin and was the one who helped Joker to remove his face during the lead up to the Death of the Family storyline. Number 2. A Black Lantern Corps. One of the most terrifying villain groups, both appearance-wise and in terms of their threat level, is the Black Lantern Corps. Of course, this would be a hard supervillain group to introduce, being that we'd likely need Green Lanterns to be on the scene to help explain, well, just who the Black Lantern Corps are and why we should care about them. After all, you can't defeat the Black Lantern Corps anyways without the entire emotional spectrum of lanterns assembled to help create that White Lantern power. This threat might also just be too huge and horrific to make an appearance due to the sheer size of their numbers. In the Blackest Night storyline, they were like an overwhelmingly sized zombie apocalypse level of threat, killing heroes and resurrecting them to join their deadly ranks. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. It might be a little too confusing for the DCEU to introduce the Batman Who Laughs, as that would mean they'd likely have to involve the Dark Multiverse somewhere in their films, and the Dark Multiverse is likely too dark even for DC to make that happen on the big screen. The Batman Who Laughs is an alternate version of Batman who was infected by Joker venom after being pushed too far by the villain, causing him to lash out and kill the Joker, snapping his neck. This caused Batman to become infected, driving him insane and causing him to take down his own world's Justice League and kill his own Bat family, save for Damian Wayne, who he convinced to join him. He's one of the biggest bads in DC's current storylines. Number 10. Court of Owls. The Court of Owls is a villainous and powerful group who seek to exert and wield political influence in order to shape the world as they choose. They are enemies of Batman and often use their group of highly skilled assassins known as Talons to eliminate those who stand in their way. These assassins are also immortal to an extent, as they are often imbued with a metallic alloy known as Electrum, which has astounding healing properties and can even reanimate and resurrect dead tissue. The Court of Owls was created by Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder, Snyder, first appearing as adversaries to Bruce Wayne in the 2011 Batman series in issue number 2. Number 9. Granny Goodness. Her name might not make her sound terrifying, but Granny Goodness is not as sweet as her name makes her out to be. She became a trainer of Darkseid's soldiers after impressing him when she herself was selected to train and become one of his elite hounds. Fans of Kingsman may find the story of how she was trained very familiar. During her training regimen, she was given a dog to train herself, who stayed with her and progressed alongside her. After bonding with the animal, whom she named Mercy, she was later instructed to kill it. Goodness refused and instead killed her trainer. When Darkseid asked her why she had done this, she revealed that Mercy was worth more than her trainer had been to Darkseid, as Goodness had trained the dog to not only be loyal to her, but to Darkseid above her. Darkseid tested the theory by ordering Mercy to kill Goodness and was impressed when he found the dog actually obeyed. Goodness, of course, was forced to kill Mercy, but this act would inspire Darkseid to shape and use Granny Goodness as his most reliable trainer and recruiter of soldiers, with Goodness being responsible for brainwashing those she trained and becoming the most loyal and fearless members of Darkseid's army. Number 8. Black Flash. In the comics, Black Flash acts as a symbol of death, and also sometimes as literal death for the speedsters. You see, the former Flashes and past speedsters have all been too fast for regular death to touch them, and so it seems instead they have their own version. Enter the Black Flash. The Black Flash draws power from the Speed Force like many of the other speedsters we've seen. This being is able to freeze time, but only for those who do not possess potent super speed powers. It resembles death in appearance, looking like a corpse of a zombified version of the Flash. While Black Flash has appeared in the Arrowverse, this Speed Force entity has yet to appear in the DCEU. Number 7. Mr. Mixie Pizyelik. So Mr. Mixie might not be horrifying to look at. He's kinda silly looking, truth be told, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be scared of him. He has more power than you can possibly imagine, and in fact anything that he can imagine can come to pass, should he will it. The only limit to his reality altering powers are the limitations of his own imagination. Like Batman's Joker, he has at times claimed to be the ultimate Superman foe. In one story to prove this, he even killed all of Superman's enemies and allies just to prove how evil he was. Mr. Mixie also forced Superman to kill him as well, forcing Superman to break his own moral code. Ooh. Talk about being on Joker's terrifying level of ultimate villainy.
Oh, I don't feel so good, but it's still worth it.
Number 6. James Gordon Jr. He might not be on Mr. Mixie's level in terms of his power set, but James Gordon Jr. is one terrifying and creepy villain. As his name implies, he is related to Commissioner Gordon and is in fact his son. Surprisingly, James is not like his dad and grows up instead to become a psychotic serial killer, exhibiting early warning signs from a young age that there is something very wrong with him. He used to pick apart and torture animals and was suspected as being involved in the disappearance of one of Barbara's friends, Bess Keller, though nothing was ever proven. He ends up returning to Gotham and is revealed to be a full-out serial killer who enjoys torturing his victims to death in Black Mirror. Later on, he ends up joining the Suicide Squad and becomes the team's strategy analyzer. Man, I would not want to work with James Gordon Jr. on the Suicide Squad. I'd be like, ugh. No thanks. Number 5. Papa Midnight. Papa Midnight is a villain to John Constantine for the most part. Sometimes he's an ally, but more often he is not, as the man is obsessed with power and is a pretty bad dude. Papa Midnight grew up in Trenchtown, Jamaica. Born Linton Midnight, from a young age he became inspired by tales of dark magic that his parents had told him. He betrayed a group of slaves, conning them into believing that they would be protected if they rebelled, which led to their deaths, and later went on to sell his sister's soul into demon slavery, so that he could achieve more power for himself through using her soul as a barter chip, selling it to the demons of hell. Ooh. Considering how violent and insidious Papa Midnight is, we likely won't be seeing him in the DCEU, although he has managed to make an appearance in the CW Arrowverse, which is pretty impressive. Number 4. Crib. How does one even make a villain like Crib in the DCEU, just from a visual standpoint? Like, ooh, that'd be a lot of effects, I think. Crib is a member of the Sinestro Corps. She is described as being an alien hag and is 100% something out of a nightmare. Lots of Baba Yaga vibes here as well. However, instead of being associated with eating children, as Baba Yaga sometimes is, Crib's purpose is to kidnap the newly born children of Green Lanterns who are also parents. Crib will even go to the lengths of giving her pregnant victims 4 cesareans in order order to secure their children. Ugh. She keeps the kidnapped newborns in her hunchback, which looks like a creepy bone crib, and promptly kills the parents of any children whom she has taken away. What's more disturbing is it's never explained why Crib has this compulsion. It's just something she feels inspired to do. I guess she doesn't think Green Lanterns make for great parents? She's like, I'll be a way better parent to these babies with my weird bone crib. Super qualified. Number 3. Dr. Destiny. Speaking of Sandman, I want to talk in particular about another horrific villain who appeared there, although this one also exists as a horror and supervillain within the direct DC Comics universe as well. There he wielded a device he'd invented called the Materiopticon. This device was later retconned to be Morpheus's Dreamstone, which his mother gave him, when Dr. D appeared in Sandman. Dr. Destiny was hypnotized by the Justice League to prevent him from dreaming and becoming too powerful. As a result, he was driven insane and ended up in Arkham Asylum, wasting away, becoming a skeletal version of himself. When he escaped, he wreaked havoc at an all-night 24 hours diner where he tortured the patrons and staff before Dream finally caught up with him. Thank goodness, cause that issue, woo, it's crazy. Number 2. Professor Pig. Professor Pig's real name is Laszlo Valentin. He is a former Spiral agent who went insane and became obsessed with curing people of their individualism in order to perfect them. When the crime syndicate temporarily took over Earth, Gotham City was overtaken by the criminals who ruled in Batman's absence. Pig himself used the hospital as his own HQ and worked from there, kidnapping civilians, sedating them, and transforming them with strange cosmetic and mutilating procedures, using involuntary patients to create his own horrific Dollatron army. He was created by Grant Morrison and Andy Kubert, and also first appeared in 2011's Batman series. Number 1. Jane Doe. Jane Doe is a serial killer who served time at Arkham Asylum. She appears to not have any skin of her own, appearing to be covered in exposed muscle tissue. Instead, she covets the skin and lives of others. While she doesn't appear to have any specific superpowers, it has been implied that she might be possible of shapeshifting. She often gets to know her victims before killing them and adopting their identities, sometimes even wearing their preserved skin as a suit, instead of simply using makeup to disguise herself. For example, I could be Jane Doe right now and you wouldn't even know. That's how good she is at it. Oh my goodness.
Number 10. Styx. Starting off the list today with a pretty terrifying mutant. Jacob Akron was once a homeless man who was approached on the street by a medical researcher to participate in an experiment involving some new pharmaceuticals, and he obviously accepted because the pay was good and there were very few risks. It was revealed that during the trial, the researcher had actually lied about what he was looking into. The trial was about exploring whether the human body could develop an immunity to cancer, so Jacob was injected with a mutated cancer compound. Alongside developing an immunity to the disease, he also became a living cancer cell with the ability to kill organic matter just by touching it. However, his mind was also tainted and he took up the name Styx after the river Styx. Jacob quickly developed an affinity for death, finding it was the only thing that could bring him happiness, and alongside Gerald Stone, the two made a deadly mercenary duo. Now, I highly doubt that Marvel will ever consider bringing this baddie into the MCU because his origins are way too dark for good old Disney, plus he is a ruthless killer who does it for nothing more than just pleasure. So, for now, check him out in comic book form in his first appearance in 1988's Amazing Spider-Man number 309. Number 9. Bullseye. Known as the Mercenary of Mystery, Lester, insert name last year, might not have any powers, but that by no means makes him any less terrifying. Lester has always been a master marksman, and before his mercenary career, he tried his hand at Major League Baseball, but quickly grew bored with it because he was constantly pitching perfect games. However, he quickly found his true calling as a special operative of the United States National Security Agency. Not long after, he became a freelance merc because he found too much joy in killing his targets with his signature killing method: throwing things. Gaining a reputation in New York City, Bullseye was hired to take down Matt Murdock, but ultimately failed every time as he was stopped by, Daredevil. Later on, we see him go up against the likes of the Punisher and Spider-Man and walk away to tell the tale, which is quite the feat for someone with no powers. The worst thing this villain ever did, in my opinion at least, was kill not one, but two of Daredevil's girlfriends, Elektra and Karen Page. This led to his demise at the hands of Daredevil, of course, because I can't imagine anyone who wouldn't want revenge after that. I doubt we'll ever see Bullseye in the MCU because 1, we already have a master marksman in the form of Hawkeye, and 2, his methods of torture and his sadistic nature are utterly terrifying, and putting that on the big screen would be too much in my opinion. Check out this character for yourself and let me know what you think, starting with his first appearance in 1976's Daredevil number 131. Number 8. Blackheart. A slightly lesser known villain and utterly terrifying son of the demon Mephisto. Usually depicted as an enemy of Ghost Rider, this all-powerful demon is one of the most powerful in the Marvel Universe and possesses a vast array of magical powers, including telekinesis, telepathy, the ability to travel dimensions, and of course, the ability to project energy blasts out of his hands. Under his father's tutelage, Blackheart explored and learned everything about being evil in nature and has attempted to corrupt many of our favorite heroes, such as Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. Blackheart is the leader of the Spirits of Vengeance, a group that was created to oppose the Ghost Rider, and with their help he caused some serious damage in the Marvel Universe. Skip ahead a bit and we see Blackheart with some newly acquired demonic powers attempting to take over the Earth by himself. Thankfully this was stopped by the Avengers and Spider-Man, but not before he could rip out the Falcon's soul and send it to hell. I feel Blackheart is way too scary for the MCU because not only is he the son of Mephisto, a demon so powerful we've only ever heard of him in the MCU, he is the embodiment of evil itself with so many powers making him a ginormous threat. Imagine him getting introduced alongside Mephisto. I mean, any fight against the two would be over in the blink of an eye. Give Blackheart's origin a read for yourself, starting with 1989's Daredevil number 270, and let me know if you think he could ever make it on the big screen one day in the comments below.
Number 7. MANDRAKK the Dark Monitor. MANDRAKK is a pretty confusing entity, but also a fairly scary one. MANDRAKK was once, or is, depending on what you believe, Dax Novu. And Dax Novu was once part of the Monitor. Following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, the injuries the Monitor had suffered caused it to splinter somewhat, dividing its body and creating other, smaller monitors. Dax Novu was one of these monitors. He eventually realized that the monitors were parasitic beings who were feeding on the energies of the multiverse, slowly consuming and destroying it. He informed the other monitors of this, but was shunned for attempting to share his realization. Dax then became corrupted, turning into a dark monitor known as MANDRAKK. While we might eventually see the Monitor and Anti-Monitor make their way into the DCEU films, it's unlikely we'll see this dark monitor pop up anytime soon. Number 6. Anti-Monitor. Speaking of monitors, we should also quickly touch on another scary and powerful one, sort of the scary and powerful one, the Anti-Monitor. Anti-Monitor is a supremely powerful villain who threatened the very existence of the multiverse during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. He controlled the antimatter universe, and is hell-bent on ensuring the destruction of all things. So much so that even after Anti-Monitor is defeated, Nekron ended up trapping the Anti-Monitor's body, and as it was later revealed in Blackest Night, using it as a source of power for the Black Central Power Battery. While we might get a sort of Crisis-inspired storyline in the DCEU with all different alternate universes and timelines from DC in television and film being acknowledged, it's more likely that they'll go the Flashpoint route as opposed to the Crisis on Infinite Earths route. Number 5. Dr. Death. The most recent incarnation of Dr. Death from Prime Earth was only around for 5 issues, so it's not just his horrific story and appearance that will likely bar him from appearing in the DCEU. It's also just that he isn't really one of the main villains. He doesn't have as much clout. However, in the few issues we did see him in, he proved to be a terrifying villain and foe. Dr. Carl Helfern was a brilliant scientist working for Wayne Enterprises on a serum that would strengthen bones, causing them to become more durable instead of breaking when under stress. However, his failed attempts combined with other mental trauma and strain caused him to go insane. He killed his scientific team, injecting them with a failed version of the serum that caused their bones to grow until they were ripped apart. Number 4. The Corinthian. The Corinthian isn't specifically from DC directly itself, but is from an imprint of theirs that used to be known as Vertigo. Well, it's still known as Vertigo, but it no longer exists. It was discontinued, and instead, we got Black Label, which is also an amazing line, but everyone was obviously still sad to see Vertigo go. One of Vertigo's most famous series was Sandman, which also featured some of DC's characters who made cameos throughout. The Corinthian, however, was not one of these, but is a character unique to the world of Sandman. While we are getting a Netflix series for Sandman in 2021, I also think it would be super cool to get some darker toned DC films. Among them, it would be cool to get some Sandman, or at least a Sandman film. Although the Corinthian might be too monstrous to actually make an appearance, even if we did get a Sandman film. He is one of the nightmares that Dream made. At one point, he escapes the dreaming and ventures out in the world, where he becomes a serial killer who pulls out and eats his victims' eyes. He himself has mouths where his eyes should be, and usually wears sunglasses to disguise his monstrous appearance. Ugh, eating eyes. It allows him to see everything that you've seen, which is, gross still. No, it's still gross.
Number 3. The Brood. The insect-like alien race that travels through space with the goal of finding hosts to infest with their spawn. Yuck. Brood societies work similar to how an average bug colony works, with them living in clans or swarms that serve under the Empress Brood. They're a truly savage race that not only enjoy the suffering that they cause others, they also revel in the terror that their infections cause their hosts. They don't technically have any powers, but they are incredibly resistant thanks to their exoskeletons, they have tentacles that are capable of long-range attacks, and they use their razor-sharp teeth and stingers in close combat to deliver either paralyzing or fatal poison. The Brood have been seen on Earth many times throughout Marvel history, going up against the likes of Carol Danvers, Wolverine, Fang, and a large number of the X-Men as well. Sometime after their initial appearance on Earth, a mixed team of X-Men and the Fantastic Four discovered that the Brood Queen and her squadron were leading an attack on Earth, with the first of the bunch arriving in New York City, but thankfully they were stopped rather quickly thanks to a Cerebro-enhanced Emma Frost. They have been seen around since, but I'll let you discover what happened for yourself. Now, I really can't see Marvel bringing this alien race to the MCU as they are anytime soon. Maybe if they weren't partnered with Disney they would be willing, but I can't imagine their parent company would be cool with a bunch of malicious insect-like creatures getting people pregnant Predator style. Check out the Brood's first appearance for yourself in 1982's X-Men number 155. Number 2. Demogoblin. Jason McIndale Jr. had enough of losing against Spider-Man and the Green Goblins, so in their quest for the power that he craved, he ended up following a bunch of demons back to their lair to confront their Dark Lord. Impressed with his efforts and will, the Demon Lord bestowed upon him superhuman abilities through a demonic possession. However, the demon proved to be incompatible and ended up ripping away from his human host and began living separately as the Demogoblin. Determined to destroy all sinners and redeem himself, the Demogoblin went up against the likes of Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, Venom, and even Jacob McIndale Jr. because they were the only ones willing to stand in his way. After the Demogoblin's initial death from a church pillar crushing him, he was resurrected by Carnage using Shriek's body as a new vessel, and dubbed himself the Demogoblin now. Alongside her new BF Carnage, she traveled around with Manwolf to hunt down Misty Knight, and she would have killed Misty Knight if it weren't for Manwolf intervening. In a more recent storyline that takes place after Dark Carnage's death, Demogoblin started calling herself Saint D and basically started her own religion. Considering that Carnage is too scary for the MCU to bring in and that they play such a large role in the Demogoblin story, it makes sense that this character wouldn't be introduced anytime soon. Not to mention that they are totally fine with killing and do whatever they think is necessary. Take a look at this terrifying creature for yourself in their first appearance as the Hobgoblin in 1989's The Spectacular Spider-Man number 147, or feel free to skip ahead to their time as the Demogoblin in 2019's Absolute Carnage Lethal Protectors number 1. Number 1. Knull, the Symbiote God. Once an ancient malevolent deity whose existence predates the universe itself, and was originally content to just drift through the endless abyss that existed before time itself. When the Celestials started creating the universe, Knull was awakened by the light of creation and was pretty pissed because his kingdom of darkness was pretty much ruined. After killing one of the Celestials, he was cast back into the void once again, and then he created a symbiotic suit of armor out of the darkness he commanded and started his journey across the universe with the goal of getting rid of the other gods for good. The only weakness that Knull has is against the light, which refers to the various powers that are wielded by the cosmic entities. Knull is the one responsible for the creation of these symbiotes that we're all familiar with, you know, the ones that make up Venom and Carnage. He's the reason we have two of the most terrifying villains in the Marvel Universe, and that alone makes me want to go nowhere near him. Not to mention, he's the one who gave Gore the God Butcher All-Black the Necro Sword. Historically, we've seen Knull go up against Silver Surfer and so many gods, coming out on top every time, and then in modern times we have seen him go up against symbiote users like Venom and Spider-Man. I can't imagine we'll get to see Knull in the MCU for a couple of reasons, the biggest being that Venom isn't in the MCU, but that's not my whole argument, don't worry. Knull is a literal god capable of pretty much anything that he sets his mind to, and he is powerful enough to create symbiotes and beings that can overpower any of the heroes that we've seen both on and off of the big screen. He's too much of a threat right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not hoping he'll show up one day. Trust me, I really want him to be there. For now, read all about the symbiote god for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2018's Venom Volume 4, number 3. Number 10. The Fury. Generally depicted as an enemy of Captain Britain and the X-Men, the Fury is a deadly android built by the reality-manipulating psychic Mad Jim Jaspers of the parallel timeline of Earth 238 to destroy all superhumans but himself. Since it's not a living being, it doesn't possess any superpowers, however it's ridiculously strong, can generate lethal energy blasts, is capable of adapting to any situation, and can regenerate its mechanical body at will. Most of the Fury's enemies on Earth 238 were based on British comic book characters from the 1950s to the 1960s. 1970s. After succeeding in its mission, the Fury was deactivated until Captain Britain and his elf sidekick Jackdaw were sent to Earth 238 by the Captain's mythic mentor Merlin. The status crew and forces working for the country's oppressive regime reactivate the Fury and send it to kill the hero, and it murdered Jackdaw and then killed Captain Britain. After a little bit, it traveled to Earth 616 and continued killing many of Captain Britain's allies until it was eventually taken down and buried in the cave system of Captain Britain's mansion, where it absorbed the circuitry of the computer and repaired itself. There's a bit more to its story, but hey, I don't want to spoil it all for you guys, so give it a read for yourself, starting with 1982's Marvel Superheroes UK, number 387. Number 9. Sugar Man. One of the most terrifying looking villains on our list today is Sugar Man, the villain with a terrifyingly powerful tongue, size and mass alteration abilities, and highly advanced regeneration ability. Originally, he ran the human work camps in the Pacific Northwest and was a geneticist with a lab around Niagara Falls, where he regularly tormented his captives. Magneto needed a mutant with chrono variant powers, aka time traveling powers, in order to go back in time to restore reality's proper order before Charles Xavier's death, and Ilyana Rasputin was revealed to be one of the few around, so Colossus and Generation Next were sent to retrieve her. Sugar Man held up pretty well against them, only almost dying like 3 times. He eventually hitched a ride to the Apocalypse Citadel and was transported from his native Earth of 295 to Earth 616, where he operated with Genosha to help the magistrates create a mutant captive army that could take over the world. So not only is he scary looking, he is also scary smart. Can't imagine them sticking him into any X-Men movie, let alone an MCU movie anytime soon, so in the meantime check him out in comic form, starting with his first appearance in 1995's Generation Next, number 2. Number 8. Supergiant. Although the other members of the Black Order made an appearance in the MCU, one member was unfortunately shafted, and that is none other than Supergiant, the mentally unstable omnipath and telepathic parasite who seeks out intellect and devours it. In the comics, Supergiant had absolutely no issues with taking out the Jean Grey School and the X-Men associated with it. Later on, when the Black Order seized Wakanda, Supergiant was left in control of Black Bolt, whom she would mentally order to activate the bombs the Illuminati hid in Wakanda's necropolis. Upon activating the bomb, Supergiant was faced by Maximus, who had the trigger, and Maximus triggered the bomb, but also used Lockjaw to transport Supergiant along with the bomb to a distant uninhabited planet, where she perished in the explosion of the bomb, although she did later return as a mental projection and even attempted to take over the body of Captain Glory so she could continue wreaking havoc on the world. Thankfully though, she was eventually taken out for good by the Lethal Legion while trying to take over Thor's mind. Check her out for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2013's Infinity, number 1. Number 7. Galactus. Another villain that has been off limits to the MCU for quite some time thanks to his ties to the Fantastic Four, which has made so many fans around the world fear they would never see him on the big screen. Galactus is the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the Multiverse. Originally, Galactus was a humanoid named Galan, born in the previous incarnation of Earth 616 on the planet Ta, a paradise-like world whose civilization is said to have been the most advanced of any known universes at the time. However, the 6th Infinity and all its universes were in their final stages of collapse due to the multiversal renewal cycle, being consumed by the abstract entity known as the Black Winter. Fast forward a bit to him becoming a cosmic entity. Galactus possesses almost limitless cosmic power that gives him a vast array of powers that would take me forever to list off for you guys. It is actually ridiculous. With his insatiable hunger for energy and his heralds of Galactus by his side, the almighty being is an almost unstoppable force capable of pretty much anything. Like, seriously, he's not called the Devourer of Worlds and the God of Oblivion for nothing. Do I really need to explain why Galactus probably won't appear in the MCU? I mean, at least anytime soon. The dude eats planets, and as it stands right now, there aren't many heroes in the MCU that can help take down such a big threat. It would be super cool, and I would honestly freak if I ever saw him in a movie one day, but it is so unlikely right now just due to his sheer power and presence. Check out Galactus for yourself in his first appearance in 1966's Fantastic Four number 48. Number 6. Mojo. Just looking at this guy gives me shivers up and down my spine. Mojo is a part of an alien race from a planet known as Mojo World that resides in a pocket dimension known as the Mojoverse. He is a powerful sorcerer whose full power is unknown, and outside of his homeworld of Mojo World, Mojo possesses the ability to create an anti-life energy field that kills any natural organism. He can project concussive blasts, and he can even increase his own power through television ratings. Mojo has been seen manipulating so many characters in the Marvel Comics, including Rachel Summers, who he got to work for him for a while, but once she broke free, he took matters into his own hands and decided to create his own versions of the X-Men to serve under him, and thus the X-Babies were born. Fast forward past a ton of attempts to get his ratings up so he could increase his power, we see a desperate Mojo launch an all-out attack on New York City that separated the X-Men and sent them into intricate recreations of key periods in their lives. Now, I doubt Mojo will make it to the big screen anytime soon because, well, I mean, look at him, I can only imagine how grotesque he would look, but also because of his methods. Mojo is so self-absorbed and wants nothing more than to be powerful and liked, which for him kinda go hand in hand. So he'll do anything and everything and get rid of anyone who stands in his way. Check out Mojo for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1985's Longshot number 3, and see if you agree with why I doubt we'll ever see him in the MCU. Number 5, Dracula. A lot of you are probably looking at your screen right now like, Jack, are you sure you know what you're talking about? Dracula has played a pretty decent role in a lot of Batman stories, but this is Marvel. Well, you might be surprised to find out that Dracula has been a pretty prominent figure in the Marvel Universe for quite some time. Like most iterations, Vlad Dracula is the supreme ruler and the world's most powerful vampire. Driven by lust for power, companionship, and blood, his centuries of undead existence have brought him into a conflict with vampire hunters, other immortals, and, more recently, superpowered heroes. Born in 1430, Dracula didn't become the vampiric overlord until 1459, after he was beaten in battle by the Turkish warlord Tarak, and was taken to Egypt to be healed. However, it was revealed that he actually turned into a vampire. With newfound vampire powers such as superhuman strength, speed, and agility, a regenerative healing factor, hypnotism, and weather manipulation, Dracula wreaked havoc for centuries with few that could oppose him. Fast forward many years to modern times, and we see Dracula go up against the likes of Blade, Johnny Storm, Mephisto, Thor, and even tried twice to make Storm a vampire so she could become his bride. I can't imagine that Disney will ever give the green light for this character because a blood-sucking, all-powerful vampiric villain doesn't really fit with Disney's style. Not to mention that they don't really like to make R-rated movies, and that is the only way this character would work. Appearing for the first time all the way back in 1951 Suspense number 7, why not familiarize yourself with Dracula just a bit more? Number 4, Shadow King. Had to include the Shadow King on this list because he wasn't on the last one and he is too good, or I guess bad, to leave out. He is allegedly a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness that came to be after the first ever nightmare. Operating through Amal Farouk, who acts as his human vessel, the Shadow King is stated to be a true Omega telepath, making him the most powerful telepath on Earth besides Charles Xavier, as he has been shown to overtake some of the most strong-willed characters like Black Panther and Genta without them even being aware of it. Shadow King was actually the one responsible for the Psy War, when he tricked Psylocke into causing a massive wave of energy that destructed psionic powers across the world. However, he ended up stretching himself a little bit too thin, attempting to link with all the minds on Earth, and was defeated by Psylocke in her new Shadow astral form. This wasn't actually the end for him though, as he was around well after Charles Xavier's death. He even possessed his body for a while. Shadow King has appeared over many Earths in the Marvel Universe, taking a different evil form each time, such as on Earth 6141, where he merged with Professor X, becoming Shadow X, or on Earth 1298, where he also took over Charles Xavier and became Onslaught. I can't imagine Marvel ever putting the Shadow King on the big screen because he is far too big a threat. It seems impossible to actually get rid of him without another being whose powers are on par with him, which is actually what happened in the comics when Professor X and Psylocke teamed up. Check out this multi-universal being for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1979's X-Men number 117. Number 3, Mr. Sinister. Nathaniel Essex is the supervillain commonly associated with the X-Men, known as Mr. Sinister. He is an incredibly ruthless and sadistic man who has no problems doing whatever he deems necessary to get what he wants, including, you know, mass murder. Thanks to having his genetics altered by Apocalypse, he was transformed from a regular old human into a superhuman, capable of some ridiculous things like shapeshifting, telepathy, telekinesis, concussive blasts, and can't forget that he also has super strength, speed, stamina, durability, and reflexes. Sinister is also a scientific genius with expertise in the field of biology, genetics, cloning, physics, and engineering. The character is a master manipulator and planner with decades of genetic research at his command. He goes to great lengths to preserve his powers and personality through elaborate technological means, such as conditioning certain children to be his quote-unquote host in the event of his future death. Over the course of his time in comics, we have seen him go up against the likes of so many heroes and come out relatively unscathed, and that is why he is so high up on our list today. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1987's Uncanny X-Men number 221. Number 2, Chaos King. Amatsu Mikabashi is none other than the Chaos King, the god of evil, chaos, and the stars to the followers of the Shinto religion in Japan. He possessed the conventional abilities of one of the kami, the order of Japanese deities, such as superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, endurance, and recuperative abilities, as well as high ability to wield some form of potent Japanese magic, a brand of sorcery that seems especially effective against the Olympian deities. His physical strength, at least in his main incarnation, is considerably less to that of like Zeus or Izanagi, and is roughly equal to that of of an average kami, but Mikabashi can project energy on a scale at least rivaling that of Zeus and Izanagi as well. Like the Asgardians, the Japanese gods are extremely long-lived but not truly immortal like the Olympians, as they tend to age at an extremely low rate upon reaching adulthood, and are 3 times denser than normal human beings. During the events of the Chaos War, we catch a glimpse of Chaos King teamed up with Necra and none other than the Grim Reaper and Abomination to fight against the other gods. He even goes as far as unleashing Carrion Crow, Eater of the Dead, to antagonize the revived X-Men members. All in all, he is brutal in terms of methods and isn't too easy on the eyes either, so check him out for yourself, starting with 2006's Thor Blood Oath number 6. And number 1, the first firmament. At the very beginning of it all, there was only one universe, the first firmament. For a long time, the first firmament was the sole being in creation until its loneliness became unbearable and it decided to create the first life in creation to give itself companions as well as servants, which it eventually came to regret. It created 2 specific types. Black servants dutifully obeyed and worshipped their creator, and then the multicolored ones had completely different values and desires, as they wanted a dynamic, diverse, and continually evolving reality, where beings lived, learned, reproduced, aged, and died in order to slowly improve themselves through evolution. Unfortunately for them, when the creations argued with their creator, they were destroyed completely. Now, one can only imagine what might happen if an entire universe were to turn evil, but this is the answer to that question, since the first firmament became the evil that many people worry about. Just imagine an evil sentient galaxy that could destroy pretty much anything with just a gesture. Absolutely terrifying and way too much for the MCU. Check it out for yourself in its first full appearance in 2017's Ultimates 2, Volume 2, number 5.